fellow doodlers! Last video I talked about the basic shapes that I use when drawing bodies. Well, now I'm going to show you how you can make those shapes look more alive. And to do that, we're going to talk about the line of action, a perspective line, shoulder and hip lines, and just how to draw the body in different perspectives. Or at least the perspectives that I know how to draw it in. First, I want to talk about the line of action. What is the line of action and how do you use it? The line of action is an imaginary line that runs down the spine. It is always a curve, not S-shaped or a squiggle. How do you find it? Well, like I said before, it runs down the spine. So find the spine, find the line. Oh hey, that rhymes. That might help. What do you use this line for? This line is very useful for when you want to create a less stiff pose, and that creates interesting poses and interesting characters. Leading off the line of action is a line of perspective. For all I know, I made this up, but it tells you where the body is facing. It runs down the center of the chest to the pelvic area, and I usually use this for more casual poses, but it easily gets mixed up with the line of action, so the less action happening in the pose, the more likely I will use the perspective pose. When I draw a side profile, the perspective line disappears because you can no longer see the center of the chest where I draw it. The direction that the line of perspective is curving, that is where your body is facing. If you can remember that, it'll be a lot easier to figure out how that works. And now that you know about those lines, we'll pop in some more. The shoulder and the hip line. These lines will further your posing skills. Straight across lines are boring, so tilt them. Tilting them makes curves in the body and makes the pose more interesting. Curving the shoulder line can make shrugging or slumping depending on how you slope the line. And one more thing before actually drawing poses. You know where the line of action and perspective are. So how do you draw the body in perspective? Well, first, start with your line. I usually pop the head in before I draw my line. Remember, the way that the line curves, that's the center. No matter how much you curve that line, always be sure to keep it at the center of the chest. As you turn the chest, the shoulders are going to get smaller and move closer to the line. The shoulder that's in the back of where you're turning, that one's going to slowly disappear, while the one in front is going to be completely in front of the body. The pelvic shape comes to a point on the line, and that's how you know that's the center of the pelvic area. So I don't think I'm good enough to teach side profiles yet, but here are the basic shapes that I use at the moment, and that might help you get an idea of how you draw side profiles, or at least in the body. I am still working on the faces. Do you know how hard that is? I mean, honestly, I didn't think it would be that hard. You have less eyes to worry about and half the mouth gone. Why is it so hard? Alright, now put it all together. Here are a few poses that I put up on screen. I'll be drawing on top of these so you can see the lines and all that stuff in work. If you're drawing digitally, you can easily find a chart like this and draw on top of these bodies. If you're drawing traditionally, then you can just copy off of what I draw on top of these. If you're drawing digitally, now you're going to have to step away from those pictures, turn off that layer, whatever you want, and draw those shapes on your own, no tracing this time. If you're drawing traditionally, just copy off of what I did here and see if you can get the pose to match up as close as you can to the poses that are on screen. After doing this several times, your brain will automatically start to see the shapes in lines in the body. It's just some artist thing that I've learned throughout my years. Alright, so if you want to further your drawing skills, I would suggest doing something known as gesture drawing. Gesture drawing is where you draw the pose as fast as possible, getting in the motion and the basic shapes down before moving on to the next subject. You can do this in public, where you have to quickly draw the person before they move away, or you can do this using a website that I really enjoy, Line of Action. With this website, you can study hands, animals, poses, and facial expressions. I usually just stay within the figure drawing area. This website is really nice because you can select maybe a specific age of people that you want to see. You can select clothing or no clothing or both. You can also select whether or not you only want female or male characters. Then you can set how long each picture is up for, and if you don't like the pose or you really don't want to draw that pose, like those super dramatic perspective ones, then you can easily skip those. But don't run away from your problems. Practice those poses too until you get the hang of it. Gesture drawing can do a few things for you. First off, it'll make your pose more fluid. After doing this so much, it'll put in those lines and those shapes all on its own, and you'll easily be able to see where those are at. And it also makes it easier because you're practicing different perspectives, different looks, different body shapes, and that will make your poses less stiff. It'll also loosen up your wrist and your arm. When you're drawing, you don't just use your fingers or your wrist. You have to use your whole arm, especially when you're drawing gesture sketches, because that will really hinder your drawing if you're just using your wrist. If you're using your arm, you can go a lot faster. Practice makes progress, so the more you do this, the better you'll get. Alright, I hope this video helped in some way. If it did, please leave a like before you leave. It helps me out. If you have questions, don't be afraid to ask. I love hearing from you guys and answering all your questions. That's all, Doodlers. Bye!